Good morning. I don't know if you can tell, but one of these axes is different than the other two. It's just different. If you guessed this one, you're right. This is what I've seen referred to as a Maine wedge. And if we look at it this way, you can see it is a wedge. It doesn't have much in the way of any kind of hollow in the cheeks here. It just goes straight back. Now it doesn't go all the way back, but it goes to about here, and then it kind of comes in. Now if we compare that to all of these other axes, they're all ground differently. They're ground down thinner, so they come in, then they dive, and then they come back out. So there's a hollow formed here in the blade. So I like to read really old books, and I just find a lot of really useful information for the kind of stuff I do and that I'm interested in old books. And this book was from like 1920 or thereabouts, like, you know, how to use an axe, how to cut down a tree, what kind of axe to use. And it said that the ideal axe is a wedge, and it described this axe called the Aroostook Wedge from Maine, and that really piqued my interest. So I started looking, and I noticed some of the axes on eBay from Maine had this really drastic wedge shape. So I'm just real curious about them, and I've managed to find this one. It's 2.5 pounds. It's marked 2 1/4, but it actually weighs 2.5, and it is almost a perfect wedge. After it came out of the factory, someone took a grinder and hit it right here and took it just down a little bit. You can see this side I've filed it out already back to a perfectly flat wedge. I'm doing that to this side, and then I'm going to sharpen it up and use it. This will be a drastic wedge at about, I think I measured it at around 12 degrees. I'll, change just a small portion of the edge so that it'll chop. Less acute edge so that it'll be strong enough, because 12 degrees wouldn't last a minute chopping wood. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you this account of the Aroostook Wedge because it's just very interesting. The best possible axe for general work is one of the shape known as the Aroostook Wedge, and a good name it is, for the axe head is nothing but a plain wedge of steel, tapering when the axe is new, and absolute straight lines from pole to cutting edge. It has great cutting power, throws a chip well, and does not bind, and the thick heavy pole makes it useful as a sledge. The handle should be straight, or almost straight, handmade, of second growth maple, and of a length suited to the chopper's height and length of arm, a matter to be determined only by trial. The weight should be from 2 3/4 to 4 pounds. Finally, the axe should be kept sharpened, and it should be ground back a little farther every time it is sharpened to keep the edge from becoming too thick. Curious, very curious. Now this doesn't match that pattern completely because it doesn't go in straight lines all the way back. It curves in here at the pole a little bit, which is going to make the pole lighter, and I don't know what the balance on this thing is going to be like. So what I'm doing this morning is I'm filing these faces flat. You can see this one's already finished. I'm going to file this one flat. I want perfectly flat sides. I just want to test this concept. I'm going to put this handle on it from House Handle. This is one of the 2 handles out of 5 that was good enough to use. The other 3 are getting sent back. Yeah, it feels okay. I think it's going to be fine. We're going to start with the Baco Farmer's File. I'm a big fan of this file. It has a double cut rough side and a fine side here. You can find that in my Amazon store. This is a 10-inch. They also make an 8-inch, and this is a great axe file because a lot of people don't use the right file for the job. The common recommendation is to get a mill bastard file for filing axes. Well, that's fine, and they cut okay, but if you have to do a lot of reshaping, which is mostly what files are used for, it's going to cut kind of slow. And this double cut side, it's cut this way and this way, is going to be much more aggressive. That makes this file a much more rounded tool, and then this side is actually quite fine, so you can get a pretty good finish with this side if you use it for draw filing, which we'll get to in a bit. I'm also going to be using this file, a Swedish Oberg file. This is double cut as well, but the teeth are further apart, so it's even much more aggressive. You can see the difference here. There's quite a bit of difference in the aggression of these 2 files. It still does take a lot of time. There's only so much time in the day, so it's nice to have grinders and stuff sometimes. But this file will do make pretty short work of steel. But we're going to get started with this file and get a cut started. When you first start filing something, if all the edges are kind of like rounded, you're only contacting the surface of the metal in a small area, and it doesn't want to cut, and it'll tend to feel like slippy, like it keeps slipping on you. Okay, so we're going to go for flattening this, and there's a slight dish, so I'm actually going to take more off here first, and then I'm going to start filing it flat all the way back here, and we'll get a pretty good idea as soon as I start filing what this thing looks like. It's way easier to file an axe into the edge than it is from filing back here, but it's also less safe. But this is totally dull, so there's really no danger of me cutting myself, and we'll put the edge on it later. Now it just seems like it's just slipping and not cutting. It's getting a flat surface established here. And once that's more established, the file will start to cut. There we go. And like I said, I'm going to tip the file up a little bit, just a tiny bit, so I'm not filing this yet because I want to get this wedge a little bit more at this angle. Okay, so now I got a good cut established. It's actually grabbing really nicely. We can switch to the Oberg. You hear that? Aggressive. Now you can see here, there's a line. You see that line? That's the weld line for the bit. So the bit is carbon steel, you know, hardened tool steel, and the back here is some kind of other soft, cheap steel, probably just mild steel. That's the old school way to do it, to weld the hard bit into the softer body of the eye. Now axes are usually made with just tool steel. The whole thing is tool steel, but this is the old school way to do it. So I've got this filed down pretty close to the edge. There's less than a 1/16 of an inch here at the end of the curve. Now I'm not going to be able to make this edge even. Does that make sense? The bevel is going to be wider on the two ends because the bit is curved, and I'm trying to make this perfectly flat. So in order to have the same amount of bevel, the same width of bevel across the entire axe, I think I would have to file this flat. For now, I'm going to leave the curve here. I'll probably take this close to right to the edge, and just so we can get these a little bit closer as well. And as you can see, someone sort of ground these corners off, and that's true on the other side as well, at least on one side. But now that I'm close to the edge, I'm going to switch to filing flat across all the way up into here and start to get this whole face flat. It's going to take a minute to get our cut back, and then I need to concentrate on actually keeping this flat. One of the main skills in filing is to keep the file flat and not tip it as you're filing, especially at the end and beginning of strokes. This is just really challenging with this clamp in my way. Because typically when I'm filing an axe, you're working more in here, but with this one I have to work all the way back here. So I think I'm going to go to the scrap yard, see if I can find a bar of steel to put through the eye here. That seems like a decent system. Before anyone starts flicking me crap for dragging the file backwards on the axe, just don't. It's just my personal opinion that dragging the file lightly back over the surface does not damage the teeth significantly. I've been doing it for years. Allows me a lot more control because I can maintain my angle every time I pick the file up and set it back down. It's almost like I have to refine my angle. This way I'm already reloaded at the right angle when I pull the file back and I'm ready to cut. And I like to just change it up, like technique-wise. And I'm just going to reestablish this bevel now. Now I'm concentrating on just really keeping this nice and flat. Because up to this point I haven't always. It's quite difficult to do that. It's a real skill. Right now I'm just trying to get the major scratches out, get a little closer to this edge, and it's looking really good. Okay, we can see this here. A little wider than I want it still. This is what I want it to end up being. And I still have to file it back again, both because it's dull and to reshape it, change the angle to a little more steep. Get the other side the same, and it won't be too long now before it's ready to haft up. Alright, again what I'm doing here is I'm trying to start to really smooth it and make it sure it stays flat. So I'm going to really watch out for pins and dust and start to get a method that's just really tight and controlled and flat, and keep repeating that carefully over and over again. I can't afford to be haphazard anymore. Also, I need to lighten up this cut, actually, like that. There we go. Now, for all I know, making these really flat surfaces is a terrible idea, and it's going to make my axe stick like crazy. Yeah, that's good enough. I'm not trying to polish the thing, but that's the experiment. Stash those away for a rainy day. Nice clean iron filings. Both sides are good. I'll just put a little bevel here and sharpen that up. I think I'm probably going to go with about 25 to 30 degrees on this bevel. Maybe I'll actually try to measure that. I'm not much for measuring things, but that could prove like a good idea. And let's see what angle we ended up with. It's only about 13 degrees. Now if I just came all the way to the edge at 13 degrees, that would be ridiculously thin and fragile. So having this little, 1/16 to 3/32 bevel on here at 30 degrees is going to be, probably what I want, at least to start with. Okay, so now it's about 13 degrees. I set the dividers to about 25 degrees. And if I put those on here and hold it evenly, that means that if I want about 25 degrees, I need to have about the thickness of my finger space right here when I'm filing, right about up here by the eye. So that's good enough for me. That's kind of about what I usually do anyway. So we're going to be about like this at the very edge. And again, I'm not sure that something more like 30 degrees might not be better for the kind of general firewood chopping stuff I'm doing. It might be a little safer. Right about like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and make this bevel straight for now, and then as I sharpen it, it'll round off a little bit. You see what I'm saying though with the maintenance, as you keep sharpening back, this is going to get more and more like a blunt, fat edge, and you'd have to go back and refile this back to a flat wedge again. Seems like possibly a high maintenance configuration. Alright, this turned out a little wider than I wanted it even down here. This isn't too wide, but it's a little wider on the other side. It's a little bit, you know, uneven. I'm just going to try to even it out across the whole bevel. And then we're just about ready to hang this thing. And I'm not being very careful about my angles because, like I said, I have a preference not to measure things carefully. Part of that is preference, just personal preference, and part of it is just wanting to get better at judging things by eye and getting a feel for where I want the bevel to be, so I can just grab a tool, you know, a file or a stone at any time, kind of instinctually just bust out the bevel that I want. But it's not all good, you know. I think sometimes it backfires on me, so. But that's just how I always approach things. And, you know, the reason I'm doing this is I'm just curious, but also to understand this whole problem of axe geometry better, because it's kind of a thing I've been putting off thinking about. Someone was flicking me shit for it recently, and gave me some suggestions to try out, but I kind of lit a fire under my ass to do a little more, go back and reread some stuff that I've read before and look at the problem a little bit. I'm what's called autodidactic. I learn best at my own pace, in my own way, and often that, I think a lot of autodidactics would understand that. You know, when I say for me, that means sometimes I'll just put off thinking about or jumping into something at all because I'm really obsessive about things when I'm doing it, and I like to focus on what I'm thinking about. So with this topic in particular, you'll find so many different recommendations, and I don't, you know, really believe anybody. So for me to tackle the project and have anything much to say about how you should file your axe or what the geometry of your edge should be like to prevent it from sticking, to make it cut well, to be strong enough, and all of that, you know, I feel like I have to really tackle the entire problem and dig into it and take a look at a lot of different opinions, and then just, you know, do axe lab and test the stuff out, you know, test all these ideas out and compare them. So I'll probably be doing that if I have time and energy this spring while I finish up my cord of wood and file some different axes in different ways and then compare them all. And this is going to be one of them, is just this straight ass wedge here. So we're established probably around 25 degrees flat on this. I will probably just go ahead and hit that with a stone, get it sharp, and use it the way it is, just flat like this. Just go and see how it functions and how it holds up to actual use. So here it is. I got it hafted up last night on one of the 2 decent, or at least usable handles I got from House Handle. The other 3 are going back. This was huge down here, and I had to... I did several things. One is it swept way back like this, which was super annoying because when it actually like hits your palm and torques the wrist. And also it was just super fat, and it was fat all the way down to here. It was totally bizarre. And then also up here, like right here, it was super thick on, you know, just sticking way out. It just took a really long time to get rid of all that wood. I have no idea why anyone would design an axe handle with that much wood up there. Okay, so apparently this is a Man brand. I don't know my axe stamps, so that's what someone told me. Now, you could see the bevel that I put on it there, and right down to the edge even, it's probably almost 1/8 of an inch wide. That's wider than I wanted, and I'd originally thought something more like 1/16 of an inch. but I don't really know what I want out of it, so I'm just going to have to use it and see how it goes. I'll get out and use this soon and see what it's like, and if anyone has any guesses as to what it's like, or they've already used one and know what it's like, leave a comment. I'm kind of curious about that. Or if you just want to guess what it's going to perform like, if you think you already know. Maybe it'll be amazing, maybe it'll suck. Probably more likely to be just kind of a compromise. Maybe it's good at this and not as good at that, and I suppose maybe there's a reason that these are not common anymore, but then again, you could just as easily say that there was a reason they were common and popular at some point in the past, at least maybe in Maine, I don't know. And that at least one person thought it was the most efficient, bestest axe design ever. Not exactly this design, but something similar. So I have to say I'm very curious, and I'm curious to keep it around for a while if it functions at all well, and compare it to other designs, and just use, I kind of want to get a bunch of different configurations available to me so that I can, compare them over a period of time. And more than anything, just to see which one I grab. This one's a little bit heavier. It says 2 1/4, but the head actually weighs 2.5 pounds, which I like. But overall, the goal is to get a bunch of axes with about the same handle and as close to the same in other dimensions, but shaped, ground, and sharpened to different configurations, and just see which one kind of rises to the top as a general firewood axe. And to just learn more about axe geometry and how it affects performance in the field over time under real-life conditions. Because it's one thing for me to kind of just go compare a couple things real quick, but it's another thing to use them for a while and really decide that I do or don't like them. Anyway, I'll see you soon when we get this thing out and start doing some chopping.